All right, everybody, a nice little quick video for you. And if you don't know anything about the waste industry, stick around because I'm going to put some videos on the screen which will explain what I'm talking about in this video. It's very big news in the waste industry and it will affect everybody, not only people who've got skip companies, but them mainly. So I've just been to the other side of town to buy myself a new set of earphones. Because when you do editing videos and stuff like that, I saw these at the auction the other day. I thought I'm going to get them, and I've bought them, and they ain't got the wire to even use them to listen to. So I've bought them for now, which is brilliant, innit? But anyway, that's just life, innit? I'm not the only one who has a bad day. So the government, before we go into that, somebody rang me the other day about wood, asking me what's happening with wood, and I'll tell everybody again. I said this in a video a month ago, so he missed the video, so don't forget to follow me and subscribe. And I always have, news that is coming up in the waste industry that will affect everybody. He said, "Oh, what are you doing with your wood? I'm struggling to get rid of it." Well, what I said in my last video is that the power station Lockerbie, right up north, is on shutdown for maintenance. And what happens when these big massive power plants go onto shutdown is there is a massive influx of wood. When there's a big influx, of wood with nowhere to go, your big sites like your Stobart or whatever they're called now, they've got big sites, they'll take it in there, they'll sit on it, and because they know that there's not anywhere for the wood is to cover obviously their running cost, which is where, the way that it goes. A lot of people do ring me about wood, and there is a lot of new companies popping up who are doing things with wood because it's eventually it will be a commodity. We pay millions for gas and all that, lots of do eating and everything, so it's not going to be long, I don't think, before wood does become a commodity. But well, this big power plant's down, I think there's a couple of them getting worked on, but Lockerbie is absolutely massive. It takes thousands of tons of wood, so there's more wood than there is burners to burn it in, unfortunately, for us in the waste industry. Puts all your skip prices up. Obviously, we had the big increase in landfill tax each year, which leads me on to what this video is about. So I'm going to put some videos on the screen for you to watch, and I'll explain what this is for people who are not in the waste industry. But if you are, we're talking about Trommel fans. So these are Trommel fans on the video. You'll be able to see, I'm going to put one on. And what it is when you have a skip at your house or whatever, you throw, brick, rubble, all your rubbish in there. And the small portion of that rubbish, like anything smaller than your fingernail, we call it 20mm fans or 10mm fans. Anything smaller than your fingernail falls through little holes, and that is where the majority of the weight comes from in a skip. It's too small to physically sort out, so it's actually too small to be picked by anybody manually, and it's too small to be, done. You can't use a fan to blow it out or anything. And this is the main bulk of the weight in any skip, a general waste builder skip. So what the government is suggesting is that this material, the Trommel fans right now, goes to the tip and they use it to cover the top of a landfill. And you pay, anywhere up to about 15 quid for fans, for qualifying fans to go into a landfill and be used as a cover material. The £15 is for the landfill to spread it around, and then you've got another £5 or £6 a tonne, which is your tax. I think it's 4 quid or something. So you pay about 20 quid. What the government is suggesting is, because there's so much fraud in the waste industry and, people doing creative bookkeeping, shall we call it, that they're going to remove the reduction on this material. So how they work out what a Trommel fan is, basically you get it tested and they say, yeah, it's soil and hardcore, it's not waste. What the government is suggesting is, because so many people book waste as Trommel fans and it's actually waste and all that sort of stuff, I'm not going to go into any of that. People do whatever they do. But what the government is saying is that by 2030, they're going to reduce, they're going to increase the price of this so it's in line with your normal landfill waste. Obviously, this year we had a massive increase of £20 a tonne. So if we think we're going to get a £20 a tonne increase up to 2030, that will put landfill waste over the £200 a tonne mark. If Trommel fans are going to follow suit, they said it's going to be a tiered system, so it'll go up a little bit each year until they are the same level. How can somebody rent a skip and they're throwing soil and hardcore in it or whatever, and it's got dust and plasterboard or whatever it is, just bits of dust and, sweepings up off the floor, How can you pay 200 quid to get rid of that when people are paying 10, 20 quid now? You know, it is going to be such a massive problem. But what is the solution? And you know that I love a good solution, because, you know, a load now into the tip is what they use for covering over the tip is, I don't know, 20 quid a tonne, whatever I just said. If they do what they were intending to do, you're going to be talking £200 a tonne, £250 a tonne by 2030. So where a load now will cost you, for instance, 30 tonnes, you know, because you 450 quid, you're going to be talking 6,000. And that's if the landfill doesn't, you know, it ain't higher than that. So we're going to go from 450 to 6,000. What will that do? Well, you build the skips, it will put them absolutely through the roof. Anything with any dust in it, nobody's going to want. I mean, the other thing is, you're going to get people mixing this sort of material into the soil and hardcore. You'll be buying crushed brick and it'll be full of Trommel fans. You know, crushed brick will be free, as long as they can take it with some Trommel fans in. Because that is the only way to do it. It is impossible to charge somebody, you know, £700 to rent a skip just on the basis that it might have a ton of dust in it. Some skips that come in, you know, can have 4 or 5 ton of this material. If it's, you know, if they're digging the garden out and then they throw a load of rubbish on top of it, the full load is contaminated and a load of mess. But there is a solution to the problem. And obviously we're going to have to sit back and watch what happens, but I guarantee this is going to come in. They're just, you know, proposing it now, but it's going to come in. There's no way, because the government cannot, you know, curb the, you know, misdescription of waste and stuff like that. They can't curb it. It's impossible. They're just, you know, they can't get on top of it. They don't know how to get on top of it. And this will seem like a way to do it. You know, instead of having 2 different tax levels, one of them's 120 quid, one's 3 or 4 quid, they're just going to put them both the same. Anything that goes in a landfill, you know, you get charged. And what that will do is, it will push the price of, you know, normal waste going to RDF, you know, for incineration, it will push that up as well. Because if a landfill's 200 quid, they're not going to let people go into an incinerator for 100 quid, are they? They match them, so they always go close to each other. But what the solution is that you can wash this 20 mil soil, and I'll show you some videos of a wash plant operating. And what it does, it uses water, it sprays it at the fans, and it reduces the, you know, into its different elements, which would be a bit of sand, a little bit of gravel, 10 mil, a little bit of 20 mil gravel, and stuff like that. All the, you know, trash, as they call it, will float off on the top of the water and be separated. But there is a problem, and the problem is that, let's say, for instance, there's been a tin of paint in the load. If that tin of paint is mixed in with your Trommel fans, it goes through the big drum, a tin of paint splits up and it contaminates the full load, the full 30 tonnes. So the Environment Agency then have a concern about the quality of the water. What the problem is with the systems in this country is that the Environment Agency and HMRC kind of work against each other in terms of policy. So the HMRC want to make sure everybody's doing things correctly on a financial point of view, and the Environment Agency want to make sure everybody's doing everything right on an environmental point, and the two things kind of collide a little bit at certain points. So the option to it is washing this material, but the Environment Agency don't like it because you're producing contaminated water. One of the lads there on the building site. So you know, it's very difficult. We need to find some way to make a wash plant that can wash this material with a closed water system, but the water system also needs to be able to be filtered to get out any contaminants, like a float and sink tank. Say there's a bit of oil in the water, oil floats on top of water, so some way to catch it and remove, you know, anything that's not supposed to be in there. And I mean, it is a very, very worrying time for people, I'll tell you now. Because if this comes in, it will change the full industry, you know, up on its head. You know, waste is being taxed within an inch of its life. The only thing that I'm not bothered one way or the other, but obviously the governments at the minute are really going against each other. They're all banging heads, and you've got you know, this government and that government. I'm not going to try and pretend I know all about politics or anything, but you've got, you know, these reform people, and they're really against, you know, not against, but they don't like the net zero, which is to do with recycling and, you know, sustainable energy and all that stuff. They don't like that as much as the governments that we've got now do. So they might come in and make some changes to that. Obviously, we're in the European Union, so they make a lot of our decisions, even though we left the euro. You know, so we're banging our heads. So who knows? You know, it's government policy to do with recycling. I can't imagine, you know, what people don't realise is there'll be somebody in an office, not a politician, who will be making the decisions regarding, you know, landfill tax and stuff like that. I mean, yeah, the Prime Minister will have the final say, I would have thought, but, you know, he leaves it to his team to do it. So what I'm hoping is that they will have, you know, find some way to make this sustainable for the companies that do try and do it right. Or somebody somewhere will build a wash plant. Really, you know, being the person, the innovator that I like to think I am, I should really build myself a little mini wash plant that can do all these things I'm talking about. The problem is it'll probably cost me 50, 60 grand, even if I build it myself. Yeah, don't get me wrong, you could probably sell them for £500,000. If somebody come to me and said, I can get rid of all your Trommel fans, I can make you sand and gravel out of it, and it's going to cost you 500 grand. If you worked it out, even at today's prices, it would probably be a sound investment. But a lot of the wash plants I've seen, you know, they do struggle to process material consistently. They do break down a lot. You get a lot of problems with pumps. They're expensive to run. So who knows? But anyway, you know, bringing you a little bit of news there, what's going to be happening very shortly. And I hope you enjoyed the video. I've got a million breakdowns today, like every day, which I won't bore you with, but I'll see you all soon. Bye.